morning, friends. We have gathered here to praise God and to witness to our faith as we celebrate the life, the love, and the legacy of C.T. Martin.
The Bible tells us that for everything there is a season, a time to live and a time to die.
What I love most about serving with CT is that you always knew exactly where you stood.
C.T. Martin was one of the few genuinely humble politicians that I know.
He loved the city of Atlanta with all of his heart, but he loved Southwest Atlanta the most.
He didn't do a whole lot of talking. He did his thing through action.
We must work the works of the one who sent us while it is day. Because night is coming when no one can work. C.T. Martin worked during the day. He fed the hungry, housed the homeless, encouraged the poor, restored the shattered. He taught the children, strengthened the families, supported the schools, directed the policy. C.T. Martin worked while it was day.
You see those young people over there? That's C.T. Martin. You see the middle-aged people in the back over there standing up? That's C.T. Martin. You see the culinary arts people back there? That's C.T. Martin. You see the homeless people on the street? That's C.T. Martin. There was never anybody too high or too low for C.T. Martin.
C.T. is someone you could always count on, C.T. And that's not true of everybody.
We are the youngest of the Martin children, and we just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for everybody being here, for celebrating our father. He loved Atlanta.
After you delivered an auditorium, the streetscapes, the urban villages, the doctor parks, after you run the dollar stores out of town, the dope pushers from the corners, the Downtowns and Tomasinos from City Hall, after you sacrificed it all, who will carry the torch of Clarence Terrell Martin?
Do not weep for C.T. Martin today, but celebrate with him, for his life was lived with courage, with conviction, with urgency. He worked while it was day.
Say his name, C.T. C.T., we love you. Thank you.
Godspeed, C.T. Martin. God bless you, and God bless the Martin family. Thank you very much.
2, 3, cut.
This is called Centennial Yards, formerly the Gulch, and of course this whole development was passed in 2018 by the Atlanta City Council. So this is one of the first pieces of development. There's about 15 different parcels that will eventually be developed over the next 10 to 15 years. So the first portion here is at Ted Turner Drive and Peter Street, which is in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood. And there's 162 apartments that have been rehabilitated to its natural historic beauty. So this is an old building that was probably built somewhere around 1910. There are studios and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So this development is actually the gateway to further development in Southwest Atlanta. Castleberry Hill has really been flourishing along with other areas in Southwest Atlanta. We're just very excited about the development that's happening in this area. It's going to anchor this end of the lower end of downtown Atlanta from Marietta Street, coming back to Castleberry Hill and going further southwest. So this is something that's very exciting, and we're looking forward to more development that will take place.
We're here today at the Maggie Russell Tower to help to provide, along with our partners GenCare and their Executive Director, Councilwoman Carmelita Gum from South Fulton, 80 COVID-19 vaccines for seniors who are here in the building. There are over 400 residences in the Maggie Russell high-rise, but there are about 80 folks who had not received their COVID-19 vaccines. So a lot of the seniors, aren't mobile, meaning they may not have a car or access to transportation, to help them to get vaccinated, to protect them and others who already have been vaccinated in the building from the scourge of COVID-19. It is still important to adhere to the CDC guidelines so that we can beat this pandemic. We are so close to the end of it. Millions of Americans adult Americans have been vaccinated, but we need every American to step up, get a shot in the arm, because it protects yourself, it protects others, it protects our community. The city of Atlanta is still in phase 2. We would like to open up. We can't do so until we have the results in the broader community that our infection rate is beneath 5%, that people are still wearing masks and socially distancing, that everybody is getting vaccinated. The more we do that, the quicker we can go back to normal.
This is Councilmember Jennifer Ide. The time is now 10:01 a.m. on Thursday, May 20th, and today we are starting day 6 of the City Council review of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 22 municipal budget. I'm joined this morning by my Vice Chair, Howard Schiff, of the Finance Executive Committee. I know we've also been joined by Council members Andrea Boone, Marcy Collier-Overstreet, and I will acknowledge the council members in between presentations as I am made aware that they have joined us. Council members will be cycling in and out as their schedules permit today. For today's schedule, we have grants and community development from 10 to 11, aviation from 11 to 12, the Atlanta Information Management Department from 12 to 1, and then Invest Atlanta from 1 until 2. We're going to try to stick to those timetables, particularly the start time. So if we finish a little early, to the members of the listening public, the line will just go quiet in between, and we'll start right back up on the hour again. An electronic copy of the budget book and all presentations can be found under the proposed fiscal year 22 budget tab on the Finance Executive page of the City Council website. That's where all of the budget materials can be found, both today's presentations and the presentations that have already taken place, and you can also see the overall budget information on revenues as well in the electronic budget book there. At the completion of each topic, council members will be able to ask questions. Colleagues, please use our internal application or send me a text if you would like to be in line to ask a question. I believe I missed, we're also joined by Councilmember Antonio Brown this morning. So we're going to start with grants and community development for my colleagues and the public who have access to materials. It is on page 446 of the budget book. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to grants and development. And please introduce your team, and then you can jump into your presentation. And I'm just going to make my little public service announcement to please, if you're not speaking, for everybody on the line, if you would mute your phones. We've been having a little bit of an issue with feedback. I can hear somebody right now sort of jostling around, and it makes it difficult for council members to hear, and it makes it difficult for the public to hear. So if you're not speaking, please put your phone on mute. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Grants and Community Development.
Good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. Fantastic. Good morning, Councilmember Ide, and good morning, members of council. I am Deborah London, the Commissioner for the Department of Grants and Community Development, and I'm joined this morning by Ms. Monique Franklin, who is the Department's Director of Administrative and Technical Services. We're looking forward to also providing a more detailed grant update at next week's CDHS update. I know we're limited in time today, but we have a very thorough and complete update for you all next week at the CDHS. And I don't see the slide, so I'll just say them on the next slide. If we could go to the summary of current operations. The department was established February of last year. And our department includes staff from 3 other departments, including Office of Grants Management, the Office of Housing and Community Development, and the Office of Human Services. So if we can go to the next slide. I see the slides now. Okay. I am on the slide with the general budget trend and the head count. So you'll see that because we're new, there are only 2 years reflected here. For this current year, we're asking, well, the proposal shows $1.3 million. The department has a total of 11 general funded positions, and they're reflected here as the Director of the Planning and Programs Operation, the Director of the Administrative and Technical Services Office, the Compliance Director, as well as the Compliance Manager, and then the majority of my administrative support staff, which includes the Business Manager, the Administrative Assistant, and 2 accounting techs. However, the 2 additional positions, of course, would be my position as well as 2 positions added to the continuum of care, which is represented and served by Partners for Home. So I want to be sure that that's reflected. The primary focus for us are, of course, the grant services that we provide. Affordable housing is served through our home grant from HUD, the CDBG construction portions. The housing opportunities for persons with AIDS is our HOPWA program, and then our public services and homelessness funds come from the CDBG public services and the ESG grant. We focus on 3 areas, and that's increasing the residents that are served year over year. We always aim to provide as many services or to touch as many Atlanta residents with the services provided. And that, of course, is through our partners in the community. And we're constantly working to increase the number of people who can respond to those federal awards and the RFPs. Of course, it's mandatory that we meet annual timeline ratios and that we expend funds as required by the federal government. Monitoring is also key for us, and compliance, of course, is how the federal government determines if, in fact, we are abiding by those federal regulations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So the next slide that I have is just a highlight of some of the areas that the department focuses on throughout the city. Of course, with last year being so greatly impacted by COVID, a lot of the work continued but was slowed, and I hope to have updated pictures for you next time. I'm now on the slide with the FY21 summary and key metrics. And here you'll see that with CTE, we were able to serve and touch 1,741 households, and that yielded an expenditure of over $7 million. With our ESG program, $522,000 were expended. That's approximately 1,300 households. With our housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, we've expended more than $18 million, touched more than 1,795 households. And with our home program, we've expended more than $2 million. The goals for FY22 are really reflected in the amount that the city has been allocated for the next fiscal year. And for we've been allocated from the federal government about $7 million. Our ESG program is $610,000, and you know that focuses entirely on homelessness. The housing opportunity for persons with AIDS is $22 million for the city of Atlanta, and then our home program is $2.2 million. Next slide. So for the portion that we receive of the general budget, the majority of it is personnel and employee benefits, and then the smaller portion for our contracted services. We use that primarily to help us assist us in reaching out to agencies who can provide additional services to supplement what's already being done by staff. And then, of course, supplies at $74,000. Next slide. I included the department's organization first because there has been such a significant shift in where this department was in February after it was created and to where it is now, the amount of staff that's been increased. And I will go into a lot more detail about that at the CDHS presentation next week. But we have grown significantly, especially in the HOPWA division, so that we can meet these needs of our service providers and, of course, ultimately the constituents who receive these services. The HOPWA staff has increased significantly, as has the construction in Section 8, and our finance and debt division has also increased. And then lastly, I concluded with just the focus for the next fiscal year. Unfortunately, the department has experienced a lot of turbulence even before the new creation or the new establishment in its current iteration, but we're facing that head on. We are communicating quite openly and regularly with HUD, and we are communicating with our project sponsors and other service providers. And the focus remains on increasing the number of qualified respondents to our federal awards, thereby providing service for more and more Atlanta residents, meeting the timeline and expenditure deadlines, and of course, providing the technical assistance for those service providers as professional development for staff. And we'll gladly take questions at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner. Colleagues, if you have questions, send me a text or a message while I'm waiting to see if anybody else has questions. I do have a few of my own. And Commissioner, you've been here, what, about 4 or 5 months?
It will be 6 months on the 30th of this month. I started November 30th.
Okay. So getting your feet under you, but still I'm sure that a lot to learn. One area that, you know, as council members, we often get outreach from organizations that are grantees on, you know, organizations feeling like they're not getting paid in time by the city, putting them at, you know, financial risk themselves. I've heard recently, we had that issue with HOCLA for a while, and I know that was a little bit of a complicated issue. You know, I've been hearing more recently from Hope Atlanta in the same vein of, you know, organizations that have delivered services and that are not getting paid by the city of Atlanta on the timeline that they have expected. I don't know if today you're, you know, prepared to speak to that or not, but it is an issue that just seems to be have been in the past at least a little bit of a struggle for our grants department. So if you need to address this at CDHS, that's okay, or if you can, you know, address it today, that would be helpful also.
Yes, ma'am. I will go into a lot more detail at CDHS, but I can provide for you specifically today that the reimbursement timeline, while it remains a work in progress for certain, we have, as a department, made some significant strides in streamlining the process in creating a checklist for our service providers about the specific requirements and understanding that the program itself and how we operate is up to the city. But HUD gives certain guidelines that must be met, and the details of that are something that the department has detailed and that the department has streamlined. And we found that the most important aspect of all of this is to make certain we're communicating with our project sponsors. We do communicate on a daily basis with Hope Atlanta, but we are still in the process of solving some of their outstanding reimbursements. So we've taken steps, including advances and constant communication and updates. But I will provide even more detail, not just about Hope Atlanta, but our other project sponsors and service providers next week.
Okay, that's helpful. And I know, I mean, I've heard from various organizations that, people that come to us and say, you know, I don't have this issue with other municipalities or other entities that I do work with, and the city of Atlanta seems to be, you know, a lot more onerous, and there seem to be, you know, conditions on top of the regular HUD conditions. And if that is true, I think that that's something that we really need to have a discussion with city council of, you know, why that's there, you know, if it's necessary, if it's not necessary, and there are burdensome provisions that we've imposed upon ourselves that we don't feel like are really necessary for fiscal responsibility or whatever else, you know, we have the ability to change that. So I don't want us to be discouraging organizations to do good work with the city of Atlanta, and I certainly don't want us to be putting, you know, important, hardworking philanthropic organizations at financial risk because of their willingness to do work for the city. If over time, for whatever reason, we've just made it difficult, and I imagine that could be possible, that we've had bad experiences in the past, and we thought, to, you know, keep us from getting into this bad situation, let's put these additional requirements. But it's probably worth revisiting to make sure that we just aren't making things too hard on ourselves, because as I, you know, said at the beginning of my question, this has come up various times over the last 3 years while I've been on council. of just hearing from entities that it's really difficult to get reimbursed, and it discourages people from doing work with the city. So I will look forward to. I'm not on CD, but I will call in on Tuesday because I would like to learn more about what your approach to this is going to be. Colleagues, anybody else have questions for the commissioner and the grants department?
Sure, with one.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking at page 450 of the budget book, which is the main line item page, and I'm wondering if there's a misprint. This indicates that this year's budget, you had no full-time equivalents. Should that number be? Why is that? And then this year, the proposal is for 6, with a variance of 6. So could you just fill in the blank here for me?
Okay, I think I may have missed what you're referring to, Councilmember. I'm sorry. I had no full-time.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
that's not my. No, sir, that's not my answer. I'm just asking if you would repeat the question. And what page did you say you were on?
So FY22, the proposal is for 6 FTEs, which is shown as the variance of 6 from prior year, and prior year shows no FTEs. So I'm just looking for the background on that.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it may be because last year we were still, to my understanding from Mr. King, still pulling together the department. And so at this point, we are at 11 FTEs that are funded from general fund.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe there were some migrations in progress. It's kind of strangely formatted here. So if someone could just kind of track that down and get back to me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Shook, I will put that on the list of things to ask the HR commissioner to just walk through clearly as well when we see him tomorrow and do the personnel paper.
Excellent. Thank you.
Colleagues, anybody else have questions for the commissioner? Any questions about the grants department?
Great. I have my hand raised.
Oh, Chair. I'm sorry. I missed you. Yeah.
Okay. So I do want clarification about that also. And just right off the top of your head, Commissioner, we do have full-time employees, right, in the department?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay.
Most are grant funded. Most are grant funded, but 11 full-time employees are general funded.
I understand that.
We have a total of 52 employees, but 11 of them are grant funded full-time.
Okay. So with this department being new, we're still tweaking the budget to accommodate all that we're trying to accomplish with the department. So where do you feel we are with that? Are we capturing more grant dollars? Because this is one of the things that are, really will allow us to be more equitable and pour funds and resources to all sides of town, especially Southwest Atlanta, where we are always in need of funds. Like we've got plenty. I have a transportation plan that has project after project that's ready to go where people need things really badly, and we're always in need of grants or more funding than our general budget can accommodate. And I know I say this every single budget year, but I just want to make sure we're headed in the right direction of capturing and maximizing grant funding and not just getting the money, but following through so that we're in a position to get even more next go round, so we can continue to stretch our general fund over areas of places where we actually need these products and projects. How do you feel our budget is? I mean, have you incorporated any kind of wish list here, or is it just more of the same? Or how do you feel we're doing with our budget as far as what we need to accomplish in our grant department.
Thank you, Councilmember. I will tell you that regarding, of course, focusing on general funds, with this being one, only my first 6 months here, and two, with the department just over a year old, I think the budget we're allocated is certainly something that we can work with. But more specifically, I think the question is about our grant funding. We are working very diligently on making sure we focus on compliance, monitoring, and timeliness so that we can make the very most of every dollar that we are allocated from the federal government, and making sure that that monitoring piece, which allows us to supervise and see how those funds are being expended and report back so we can shift. And if funds need to be shifted to other priorities, they will be based on facts. They'll be based on our monitoring and the information that we've gathered. And so we have placed a huge priority on compliance, monitoring, and timeliness so that we can have a very factual-based picture and allow us to project for the following years where funds need to be moved. And I think I hear you saying that that's one of your concerns, but it's certainly one of our concerns too.
Oh, good. So, yeah, I do like the idea of having everything data-driven, because that's the way to, track your trends and see where we can, where we have to make adjustments and things like that. So how do you feel our posture is? Are we in a posture of just, receiving funds that are given to us and then making sure that we're being prudent with those funds, or are we actually actively attracting funds, going out to get more funds? Because that's something else I'm concerned about. I want to make sure that we're doing that also.
The vision for this department was twofold. One was to focus on our entitlement grants, which come primarily from HUD. So there, we're not competing. There's a formula that the federal government utilizes to determine what jurisdictions get how much each jurisdiction and grantee receives. But the second portion of that vision was the competitive grant. And that's where other departments are competing and applying for grants that are, the requirements vary depending on which federal entity is allocating those funds, or local entities or state entities. That, council members, where we can focus energy on improving our application process, making sure we're timely. I'll tell you at this point that the department is primarily focused on the entitlement fund, because that's where we have to be sure we're not jeopardizing losing our money that was already allocated, making sure we're reimbursing and contracting in a timely manner. But as we own that process more, we'll be able to shift and focus more on assisting other departments with the competitive grant system for which they are applying.
Okay. So just so you know, that's where I'd like for us to beef it up. Because I do believe that there are so many more grants available to us, and I speak with organizations all the time around my district that are constantly looking for funding, and they have so many worthwhile projects that will really help in areas that we can't. The city's budget just is not our purview, and we definitely don't have those, we just don't have the funds to do it. But I just really want to make sure that we're in a posture of also being competitive. So just want to put that out there. But thank you for your presentation, and I just know that this is an important department for us, and it also has room for us to grow, and this is where we can really shine. So just know that's where I stand on everything.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Councilmember Everstate. And I think, those are all really important points that you bring up. And I also think just for us to get a more comprehensive picture, since this is one of the departments that gets general funds and other funds, the pages in the budget book are, only tell part of the picture. when we're looking at what your expenditures and appropriations are from the general fund. And I don't know, I think, Commissioner, it could be, I think what the council is also interested in, not necessarily just from a passing the budget perspective, but to really understand everything that your department does, is to sort of see your whole budget, where we can, understand both your grant funding that's coming in addition to your general funding, and then your, personnel and expenditures that are paid for out of the funding that is outside of the general fund. So I don't know if next week you could provide that, or you could provide that offline, but I get where my colleagues are coming from on trying to understand the head count, and then also trying to understand the, what funding you have available for programmatic needs that it's not reflected on these, the budget presentation in the budget book, because it's not general funding. So,
yes, ma'am.
If that's something that you can work on, I just think it looks a little bit funny when we're talking about this from the operational point of view. We're only seeing a little piece of the pie when we're looking at the general fund pieces of it. And I think that would help answer Mr. Shook's questions and Ms. Overstreet's questions of, who is out there doing this work, and where is the money coming from and being spent on, when we're talking about the actual implementation dollars.
Okay. In the CDHS presentation, it is already more reflective of grant year funding for each of those 4 entitlement programs that I mentioned earlier. But what I can do is go back and insert the admin portion and where the administrative portions of our grant funding go and how those are utilized. So I can certainly include that in the next week's presentation.
That would be great, because I just think the headcount issue is a little bit confusing. One, because you're a new department and they're internal transfers, and 2, because you have positions that are funded outside of the grant funding, and so it's not as easy for us to understand. Looking at you all, looking at like the Department of Transportation or Planning, that it's pretty clear. We're looking at, we can compare one year to the next. So that would be helpful for us just to understand what your department's doing and what resources it has. Colleagues, any other questions for the commissioner before we let Grants move on, knowing that she will be presenting again at CD on Tuesday, and we can get a little bit more of these details that aren't just fiscal year 2022 budget related answer then. And this may be a question that you may or may not be able to answer. It might need the COO's office to answer. Comparing fiscal year 21 to 22, where was this money sitting last year? And again, that might be something, right?
So I know that for, at least from my perspective, and maybe HR would be better able to provide additional information, but I do know that some of the funds came from the three offices that were combined. So the Office of Grants Management, Housing and Community Development, and Human Services. But I don't know specifically how much came from where. So that of course would have predated my arrival here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can get filled in on that. I don't know if anybody from finance or anybody from COO's office can add to that right now, and if not, we can go over that next week, just so we all remember what we did when we did this reorganization.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, this is the CFO Council. A part of those positions, as you know, as you may not know, some of those positions were also in finance. Right, when we had the whole grant function basically split between the mayor's office and the Department of Finance. And so,
that's right.
Yes. And so since this integration, the majority of most of the positions actually moved over into this new office. So part of it was over in finance last year.
Okay, I had forgotten that piece, but thank you for the reminder on that. And it may be helpful. I don't know if Deputy COO Burks on the line. I know she was trying to get connected. If you are on and you have anything to add to this, just to get us all back on the same page of what got pulled together and says what's moving budget-wise this year, that would be helpful.
Madam Chair, this is LaShondra Burks. Can you hear me? Okay, good morning. And so thank you all for the great question. I think the CFO Roosevelt Council did answer, hopefully, the question around comparing the fiscal year 21 to 22 and how some positions were split between finance and executive offices. And now we're working to get all of them correctly coded to the newly created Department of Grants and Community Development around the headcount piece and comparing the fiscal year 21-22. And we will be able to speak, and I want to try to figure out, and more than happy to work with you around the presentation that's given to CDHS, knowing that everyone on this call is not a part of CDHS, how we communicate that information to everyone who's interested, even if it is a presentation at Finance Executive as well. We're more than happy to do so as we kind of go through understanding what's under grants, the full operations of the department. So happy to talk with you through that and figure out how we make sure that everyone is informed.
Okay, that would be great, and that I can look at the committee lineup and see if that covers most folks on one or the other of the committees, and maybe the people that aren't on either one could just find the time to dial in to one of those two opportunities. So on Mr. Shook's question, I don't know if you were on the line or if you heard his question. He was asking about the 6 FTE variants. Are those new positions or are those transfers from finance and other areas?
Those are transfers.
Okay.
Those are transfers, right.
So we should be able to see tomorrow when we do the personnel paper, we should be able to see where those, we can ask Commissioner Norman where those came from specifically.
Yes, if they came from executive offices or finance into the grant department. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Councilmember, yes, Councilmember Ms. Franklin, my numbers person who is also on the call, did share that in last year's budget presentation, I believe Mr. Keene had a pie graph, and it showed the portion that came from executive offices was about 552,000. Department of Planning was about 256,000, and then finance had another 370,000 plus. So that's just a general summary of where the funds from for last year, or this current fiscal year.
Okay, that is helpful. And if you're saying that it looks like there's, so that's sort of where we came up with that 41,000 variance for this year, was those amounts added up compared to what is in. We had to add those three things up and then compare it to what your budget shows this year, and then we get to that small variance. Okay. Well, thank you all this morning for your patience talking through this. This is just a little bit of a trickier one than some of the other departments since we had this reorganization, but I appreciate everybody jumping in. Look forward to hearing from you on Tuesday, and Deputy COO Burks, let's talk about how we can make sure that the full council gets this information, because it is an area I think everybody's interested in, because as Commissioner
as Councilmember Overstreet was saying, it's an area where we do some really great work out in the communities. All right. Well, with that, if any other council members have questions before we let grants and community development go for the day and hear back from them on Tuesday. All right, I do not see any. Thank you all to everybody. Thank you, Commissioner, for an informative presentation. We will hear from you more at CD on some operationally what's going on. Thank you for the update on Hope Atlanta, and I can connect with you offline some more on that as well. With that, we are going to take about a 20-minute break, and we're going to come back at 11 a.m. for Department of Aviation. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are ready to get going again. This is Councilmember Jennifer I. The time is now 11 a.m. on Thursday, May 20th, and today we are in day 6 of the City Council review of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 2022 municipal budget. I'm joined this morning by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook, of the Finance Executive Committee. I believe we have Council members Mercy Collier Overstreet and Antonio Brown on the line. If other members join us as their schedules permit, I will acknowledge them as well. And earlier this morning, we had a report from the Grantham Community Development Department, and we are going to turn to the Department of Aviation in just a moment as I finish up my housekeeping announcements. To my colleagues and the listening public, an electronic copy of the budget book and all presentations are available on the City Council website. If you go to the Finance Executive Committee page and look under the proposed fiscal year 22 budget tab, you can find today's presentations as well as the presentations that have already taken place and the full budget book. And my next announcement was going to be about asking people to keep their phone on mute. If you are not the speaker, just keeps us from having background noise. It makes it easier for me to hear and for the listening public to hear. The Department of Aviation presentation, if you turn to your book, is on page 272. And with that, I am going to turn it over to the Department of Aviation, to our Interim Airport General Manager, and you can introduce your team and then just jump into your presentation. And at the conclusion of your presentation, we will take questions and comments from council members. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Ives. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, council member. It's a pleasure to be with you here this morning. I'm D.B. Odari, Interim General Manager for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. I would like to introduce my team real quickly here. I have with me our Deputy General Manager and CFO, Mr. Greg Richardson, Deputy General Manager for Administration, Michael Smith, Deputy General Manager for Infrastructure, Frank Rucker, Deputy General Manager for Operations, Jan Lennon, and Assistant General Manager for the Finance team, Brian Benefiel. Next slide, please. Oh, we don't. Sorry, I thought this slide is coming up on the screen here. So to begin with, I just want to highlight our strategic priorities. Our strategic priorities have not changed. However, we have started a process of refreshing our strategic plan, and we are soon to begin with a SWOT analysis of a current situation, where we are at, and looking at the forecast growth to make the necessary adjustment to our strategic priorities, our vision, and our mission. But for now, it is the same as previously seen from last year. Next slide, please. So in 2020, when we presented the fiscal year 21 budget, the situation in the world was changing very rapidly. Atlanta was one of the first airports to develop a playbook to draw down our operations. We went from a high of 300,000 passengers a day and 2,500 flight operations daily to a low of about 9,000 passengers a day and less than 400 flight operations daily. Since then, we have tweaked our playbook and started to plan for the resumption of operations. And I will tell this team now, as we sit here today, we are in excess of 230,000 passengers. Actually, on Monday, we moved over 235,000 passengers and over 2,000 flights. So as you could see, we are at about 80% of pre-COVID-19 flight activities and about 70% in passenger. Despite our optimistic forecast, we are exceeding all expectation in the resumption of flight activities and passenger needs to travel. And so, but the Department of Aviation have been prepared for that, and we are ahead of the rapid growth in operations here. So this slide here represents all the elements or all the areas we're looking at, and I just want to quickly highlight. When we were hit with COVID in 2020, we had to shutter some of our facilities and close one of our runway, shuttered a number of escalators, elevators, and other operational assets. Today, I'm happy to report that all of our operating assets are back fully online, all of our runways, all of our concourses, all escalator, elevators, everything is up and running. That's from the Department of Aviation side operation asset. For those services that generate revenue, non-aeronautical revenue for us, we're well on our way to a healthy recovery. Our parking operations, we are slowly bringing those online as demand needs arises. We do have all our parking decks fully operational. We have a couple of our surface lots that are still not online, and we will bring those online as needed as the demand increases. Ground transportation. This is a little bit bright spot for us. We went from a high of 300,000 TNC operations daily and over 1,600 taxi operations daily to a low of just below 100. We're back now. TNC operations, we're averaging about 10,000 daily, and taxi is about 400 taxis operations each day. Food and beverage and retail is coming back very rapidly, and the numbers, the total is on the screen here on this page here. Our sore spot is rental car center, the rental car facility. There's limited supply of rental car available to the rental car companies out there, and as such, the demand is outstripping supply. And a side effect of that is higher costs for rental cars. But we're keeping a close eye on that. We're having daily conversation with our rental car companies to ensure that they're able to meet the demand of the customer here. Our stakeholder have been resuming their operations very rapidly, and except for a shuttering of one of our checkpoints at the international terminal, all our operations are fully back up to 100%. And as I mentioned earlier, flight operations is exceeding our best forecast. Capital projects. If you look at the bottom right of the slide, you will see in 2022 we will have a number of significant capital projects ongoing. This is a sign of our airport vitality and resiliency. And so as you travel through the airport, hopefully in fiscal year 22, and you see these capital projects ongoing, it is because our forecast, we looked at our forecast, and we are planning for the future, for the renewal and replacement of our aging facility and for building for capacity and security. So all is going well at the airport here in terms of our resumption of operations. The only area that we're keeping a very close eye on right now is our labor force. Not only the Department of Aviation, but all our stakeholders are having issues with recruitment. We're working hard. We're working hard to ensure that we have the appropriate level of staffing to meet this rapidly growing operational demand. With that, I will hand it over to our CFO, Mr. Greg Richardson, to go through the rest of the budget.
Thanks, Pete. Good morning, Madam Chair, and to the rest of the City Council. Greg Richardson, Deputy General Manager, CFO here at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. If we could move to slide 4, please. And we'll start going through some of what I would refer to as some of the standard reports that we've shown in the past. So as slide 4 comes up, this reflects really the key metrics that we follow regarding operational and financial performance. And so what you'll see from one I'll highlight here is the customer satisfaction. This is a rating that is provided by Airports Council International through their airport service quality surveys. The scoring is based on a scale of 1 to 5, and we've always shown it as a percentage of that value. And in the past, and understandably so, there has been a question regarding that 85 to 87% target. And just provide some context, there's approximately 30 individual items within about 8 categories that each is rated in that 1 to 5. And so, as Bea mentioned, and he showed on the previous slide, in 2020 we had earned the best airport at 40 million passengers in North America, which is a high achievement for Hartsfield-Jackson. It's the first time that we have earned that distinction. And in doing so, our score was a 4.42 out of the 5, which is about 88%. So hopefully that provides a little context that, ideally we'd love to be 100%, but achieving that number is probably an aspirational goal. But keeping it in that 85 to 88% number is kind of what we're looking to do. Some of the other items on this, I'll touch on bond coverage and the revenue metrics in other slides, but although you're seeing sizable decreases, they all are within the range of our expectations for fiscal 21, given the impact of COVID. The second to last one, total passengers, I'll touch on that. Although painful to see, it should not be a surprise. It does reflect a decrease of approximately 57% versus our 2019 number, which right now is slightly below our projection of approximately 48.2 million passengers we had originally identified. Our last slide, we'll talk about some of the passenger graphs and some of our expectations as it relates to fiscal year 22. And then the last item, cargo, has been pretty much a bright spot. Between medical supplies and e-commerce overall, and our increase in Amazon activity specifically, cargo is expecting to approach really our 2019 levels at the end of fiscal year 21. And then for fiscal year 22, an expectation is to increase that number by 11%. So all in all, cargo has been a good story for us as we move forward. If we could move to slide 5, please. Now the fun begins. So as slide 5 comes up, I'll throw one disclaimer out there and just make sure we're all on the same page as we talk about certain acronyms. So we'll refer to CARES, CRISA, and ARP. And so CARES, everyone knows, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. CRISA is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act. And then ARP, of course, is the American Rescue Plan. So I'll refer to those in their short version, but I just wanted to make sure that we knew that on the front end. As slide 5 starts coming up, a couple of notes here. Although some certainty is revealing itself in the industry, fiscal year 22, like it was in fiscal year 21, is right now our best estimate. And again, probably slightly conservative on what we expect as we approach the new fiscal year. It is likely projections will be routinely modified and budget adjustments could be requested during the year. And as we discussed last year, we will actively monitor our revenue and operational demands and manage our expenses to ensure we meet passenger expectations. So as slide 5 is up, to orient this group to this slide, and as I've done in the past, I just want to make sure I bring my standard disclaimer in that the budget we discussed today reflects the airport as a whole, which means we include all departments of the city, both direct and indirect, that are paid out of airport funds. So on a later slide, we will provide a bridge to the budget book that Madam Chair Ide referenced, but this holistic approach provides the proper business view that we manage for operational needs as well as critical financial metrics. So as we look at slide 5, the first 3 columns provide our comparison of our fiscal year 21 projected actuals to our budget. Historically, we show this to provide additional insight into our budget requests and to provide more meaningful comparison to our upcoming fiscal year budget requests. So some key takeaways regarding our fiscal 21 performance to date. First, on the revenues, terminal run rates will end below our budget by approximately $24 million. This reflects some rate adjustments that we made regarding our international facility given the severe reduction in passenger activity and flight activity. For concession revenue, We modified the percentage rent obligation for concessionaires after we had made our budget presentation last year. So instead of the full percentage rent, payment was adjusted based on passenger volume compared to the previous year. This ultimately resulted in a reduction of revenue of approximately 61%, which coincides with the 57% reduction we mentioned earlier in passenger volume. On the expense side for fiscal 21, as we committed to last year, we focused on reductions to ensure overall savings without impacting our service. So projected savings of approximately $28.2 million, really from two main sources. First, in personnel, actually we're projecting to be over budget by approximately $2.8 million, and most of this is related to hazard pay and overtime needs during the year. For contract services, this was our major area of savings, reductions in scope of some contracts, specifically parking and security, due to reduced activity and business decisions earlier in the year, combined with decisions not to utilize some on-call contracts, resulted in savings of approximately $30.6 million. So now we'll turn to our fiscal year 22 budget. So the next three columns reflect the budget as currently shown. Well, they reflect the budget first. The budget book is the first column, the fiscal 22 budget, and then a column reflecting adjustments that we are intending to submit to get us to our current adjusted budget for fiscal year 22. Again, just as a reminder, the adjustment column will be the basis for any amendments that we submit to allow for adoption of the final budget. So regarding revenues for fiscal year 22, we're projecting total revenues of $317.8 million, which is $52.2 million below last year's budget and $27.2 million below our fiscal year 21 projections. Again, two major areas of focus here. First, on airline costs. You know, as we move into a what we refer to as a quote-unquote post-pandemic environment, we are focused on retaining our competitive cost structure while providing encouragement for airlines, both domestic and international, to return and to increase frequency to ATL. For fiscal 22, we intend to eliminate landing fees for the entire year. So this effectively reduces the current budget by $58.8 million. Additionally, through some debt restructuring and the use of CARES dollars, we will reduce the terminal rental rate for fiscal year 22 by approximately 30%. And this factor is already built into the budget as shown of $145.7 million. The second item relates to concessionaires. So the current budget reflects our estimated revenue based on full percentage rent in fiscal year 22 of about $72.4 million. We intend to adjust this number in two ways. First, we intend to reduce the percentage rent obligation by a flat 50% for fiscal year 22. That results in a reduction of about $36.2 million. Second, by utilizing the concession dollars allotted via CRISA, we will reduce the remaining rent obligation until the concessionaire's allocation is fully used. So utilizing CRISA dollars only, this reduced concession revenue by an additional $8.4 million, which gets you to your total of $44.6 million reduction in concession revenue. Just as a note, so once the ARP allocations are finalized, we fully expect concessionaires to not pay any rent to the airport in fiscal year 22. We feel like this is the most effective approach to ensure the dollars are preserved on the concessionaire side so they can open, hire staff, and ramp up their businesses to ensure a strong program as we head toward fiscal year 23. For our other commercial revenues, specifically parking, car rental, and ground transportation, we are showing an increase of approximately $21.4 million over our fiscal 21 projected performance. And just to note, this does include a reduction in car rental revenue related to CRISA of about $3 million. And also, I would say parking and car rental most likely will perform better than we are projecting, but we will leave as is simply to provide some potential upside protection. On the expense side, we are projecting total expenses of $339.1 million, an increase over last year's budget of approximately $6 million, and an increase over fiscal 21 of $34.2. Regarding last year's budget, the visible change is really with personnel increasing by about $8.1 million. So in fiscal 21, we made a top-level adjustment in salaries of approximately $5.6 million as a reduction, which is not a part of our fiscal year 22 budget. Additionally, we're seeing health and pension amounts increasing this year by about $3 million. For contract services, we had really a bunch of ins and outs, guest services, terminal and airfield maintenance, and other related expenses all showed some increases, but then we had reductions also in our parking and our COVID contingency and other on-call contracts that effectively netted those out. Regarding our reduction of $34.2 million versus fiscal year 21, again, really two main areas are the drivers. Personnel reflects an increase of about $5.3 million. For fiscal year 22 funded vacancies in police, fire, and the DOA is being offset by some of the COVID-related items that occurred in fiscal year 21. Under contract services, they are showing an increase of approximately $29.5 million. As we anticipate, as Bea talked about, some greater costs and operations compared to last year as passengers return. So parking facilities will come back online requiring staff and shuttle services. Guest services will increase. Terminal cleaning protocol, airfield and fuel farm costs will increase with the activity along with security costs. And as we've historically done, we will manage the needs with the activity and generate savings where possible. But having the dollars in place to meet potential demand is important for ongoing operations. So if we can move to slide 6. This slide, for those who have been in these meetings before, this is what we refer to as our debt service coverage ratio as it comes up. And our master bond ordinance requires us to maintain a coverage ratio of 1.2 times at a minimum. And this means at the very least that our net revenues, defined as operating revenues less operating expenses, exceeds our debt service obligation by 1.2 times. So historically, we've internally maintained a goal of 1.5, and we've exceeded that target since at least 2010. Now, given the climate in fiscal year 21, you'll see when the schedule comes up that we did project a much lower ratio in our budget last year, but it was one that kept us in compliance with bond covenants. With our expense management and the use of CARES dollars for operating expenses and debt service, we project that our coverage ratio will come in at 1.89 times for fiscal year 21. Now, additionally, with the budget we've presented, we anticipate utilizing approximately $122.5 million of CARES dollars for operating expenses and debt service payments. Now, this utilization ensures our ability to eliminate landing fees, reduce the terminal rent, and cover the reduction in concession revenue to the airport. The resulting coverage for fiscal year 22 is right now expected to be 2.05 times. As I've cautioned in the past, and I'll caution this year, keep in mind these numbers will likely change as the reality of fiscal year 22 comes to be, and we, of course, will respond accordingly. So if we can move to slide 7. Slide 7 is a new slide, and it really is to bring attention to this body relating to the grant dollars related to the airport. I'm slowing my speech down just a little bit because I want it to be up so you guys can see it as we talk. And we added this slide to the presentation so you are aware of really the anticipated dollars as well as the utilization. So as it's coming up in fiscal year 20, as everyone knows, we did receive the grant for CARES. So that was a total of $338.5 million, of which we've drawn or expect to draw a total of $192.4 million by the end of fiscal year 21. So when we begin fiscal year 22, we'll have a balance of $146.1 million still left to be spent or utilized. In fiscal year 21, we did receive the grant for CRISA. And what's different about CRISA was there was an amount related to what we refer to as the airport. And as you look to a little bit to the right, you'll see a CRISA amount related to the concessions or the concessionaires. And so we're showing it separate on this because we're treating those dollars separately as we go through our fiscal years. So in fiscal year 21, we received that grant, $75.8 million for the airport and $11.5 million related to the concessions, and for CRISA, also related to the rental car companies. To date, we have not drawn any of these funds, although we are expecting to utilize the concession portion and the rental car portion of the grant in fiscal year 22. Now, in fiscal year 22, although the ARP Act has passed, we have not seen from the FAA the actual calculations or the actual grant application yet. So we expect to see that in fiscal year 22 related to ARP. And as I said, although the figures themselves have not been finalized, our estimates right now that the airport portion will be about $220 million and the concessionaires will be $44 million. Now, we have not reflected any ARP dollars in our budget or our debt service coverage calculations, but I am showing here that we do anticipate utilizing about $24.8 million of the concession portion in fiscal year 22. And this is intended to reduce the overall rent obligation of the concessionaires to zero in fiscal year 22. So we can move to slide 8. So as we mentioned before, and as Madam Chair Ide referenced as well on the budget book, slide 8 for us is what we refer to as our bridge document. The budget presentation for aviation, as we said before, is really a holistic view of all of our operations, and it includes all departments within the city that have reported separately already to this body. Now, this slide, the intent of this slide is really to provide a bridge to ensure that respective city departments, inclusive of the Department of Aviation, which are found in the budget book, reconcile back to the figures that we've presented today. And as in the past, we're also providing those page numbers for reference to the budget book. And so at the top, you'll see we group departments as aviation, the city departments, and police and fire. So for the city departments, we've also then broken them down individually at the bottom, so you can see the components of that group with their respective page reference. Now you'll also see that since we've made adjustments, or we're intending to make adjustments through amendments, you'll see the total column, which is really the second column from the right at the top. The total amount of $330,412 matches the fiscal year 22 budget column that we reviewed on slide 6. So we just want to make sure that everyone sees the whole of the budget, but at the same time, for those who want to go back to the budget book and tick and tie each of those different places, that is available for you to confirm as well. And then lastly, or if you prefer to call it finally, for me, is slide 9, which is our passenger graph. And as that graph comes up, I'll just reference, last year we showed several versions since we were so early in the pandemic. And this year what we've decided to do is really just show a more straightforward view. So when the slide comes up, what you'll see is a deep red line that is really our recurring 2019 activity, which we are treating as our base period. And so as each year transitions, FY29 just simply repeats itself because we're wanting to use that as the base for our passenger activity. There's a deep blue line that reflects our actual passenger activity since February of 2020. And then there's a light blue line, which is our current, which really is a subtly revised forecast, which we updated back in October of November of last year. And that revision was really more about scaling back our recovery that we were assuming sort of a month-over-month incremental growth versus 2019. Last year when we presented to the body, we were basically having an incremental growth of 5% of activity month over month versus 2019. And given what was going on in October, November, and everyone was still a little concerned about where traffic was going, we ratcheted down our estimates to more of a 2.5% increment rather than 5%. And as we mentioned earlier, what this all equates to is that passenger activity will be about 70% of what 2019 was for the full year. But by June of 2022, you'll see that passenger activity is expected to be about 82.5% compared to the 2019 base year figure. Now, I will say, B mentioned it in his presentation, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of pent-up demand, and there's a lot of movement in passenger activity right now. And so given the current environment and that demand picking up, of course, these can easily be conservative figures. But the one note that we've made to this body as well as to rating agencies and others is, by showing a conservative approach and our ability to still be fiscally sound, even with what we consider to be conservative measures, just ensures that as those passengers come back and numbers improve, then we have the capacity then to continue moving forward in a successful manner. So with that, as I said, I'm finally done. We'll turn it over to Madam Chair for any questions.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, send me a text or just speak up if you have a question for aviation.
Bishop with a comment.
Sure.
The problem with the Greg Richardson presentation is there typically are no questions afterwards. And I want to thank him and everyone out there. It has been a year ago, no one could imagine what everyone out there would have been put through to keep the lights on and the business running. Things seem to be swiftly improving. The good news is, even though it's the biggest airport, the busiest, whatever, you got a great bench and the stage is not too big for anybody. So as far as I'm concerned, budget looks pretty straightforward. And so I just want to thank people for working as well as you have under just extraordinarily difficult circumstances.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook. We really appreciate those comments, and the team has been working very, very hard over this past 14 months. A number of our critical employees have been on the front line, ensuring, as you put it, keeping the lights on. And thanks to them, we're able to handle the better than expected forecast surge of returning passengers.
Thank you, Councilor Shook, and I will second that. A very thorough presentation, and I did have the opportunity to be at the airport a few weeks ago and felt exceptionally comfortable being there. Everything looked great and was running smoothly, and it was great to see that. Colleagues, anybody else have questions for aviation before we let them go? All right, well, hearing none, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for continuing to make Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport one of the crown jewels of the city, a great place to fly in and out of, and keeping it, fiscally healthy through this incredibly difficult time. So we really do appreciate all that you all do on that front. We're going to take a break now. It's 11:34 by my clock. We have Atlanta Information Management, AIM, at noon. So the line's going to go quiet for about 25 minutes, and then we will be back for AIM, followed by Invest Atlanta. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My friends, we have gathered here to praise God and to witness to our faith as we celebrate the life, the love, and the legacy of C.T. Martin.
The Bible tells us that for everything there is a season, a time to live and a time to die.
What I love most about serving with CT is that you always knew exactly where you stood.
C.T. Martin was one of the few genuinely humble politicians that I know.
He loved the city of Atlanta with all of his heart, but he loved Southwest Atlanta the most.
He didn't do a whole lot of talking. He did his thing through action.
We must work the works of the one who sent us while it is day. Because night is coming when no one can work. C.T. Martin worked during the day. He fed the hungry, housed the homeless, encouraged the poor, restored the shattered. He taught the children, strengthened the families, supported the schools, directed the policy. C.T. Martin worked while it was day.
See those young people over there? That's C.T. Martin. Yeah. You see the middle-aged people in the back over there standing up? That's C.T. Martin. You see the culinary arts people back there? That's C.T. Martin. You see the homeless people on the street? That's C.T. Martin. There was never anybody too high or too low for C.T. Martin.
C.T. is someone you could always count on him, C.T. And that's not true of everybody.
We are the youngest of the Martin children, and we just wanted to take a moment to say thank you so much for everybody being here, for celebrating our father. He loved Atlanta.
After you delivered an auditorium, the streetscapes, the urban villages, the doctor parks, after you run the dollar stores out of town, the dope pushers from the corners, the Dowling-Toms and Thomazinas from City Hall, after you sacrificed it all, who will carry the torch of Clarence Terrell Martin?
Do not weep for C.T. Martin today, but celebrate with him, for his life was lived with courage, with conviction, with urgency. He worked while it was day.
Say his name, C.T. C.T., we love you. Thank you.
Godspeed, C.T. Martin. God bless you, and God bless the Martin family. Thank you very much.
One, two, three, cut. Hooray!
This is called Centennial Yards, formerly the Gulch, and of course this whole development was passed in 2018 by the Atlanta City Council. So this is one of the first pieces of development. There's about 15 different parcels that will eventually be developed over the next 10 to 15 years. So the first portion here is at Ted Turner Drive and Peter Street, which is in the Castleberry Hill neighborhood. and there's 162 apartments that have been rehabilitated to its natural historic beauty. So this is an old building that was probably built somewhere around 1910. There are studios and 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So this development is actually the gateway to further development in Southwest Atlanta. Castleberry Hill has really been flourishing along with other areas in Southwest Atlanta. We're just very excited about the development that's happening in this area. It's going to anchor this end of the lower end of downtown Atlanta from Marietta Street, coming back to Castleberry Hill and going further southwest. So this is something that's very exciting, and we're looking forward to more development that will take place.
We're out here downtown today celebrating the completion of 4 projects that were voted on during our Downtown Decides participatory budgeting process. And we're riding a bike from one location to the other to do a ribbon cutting in each of the 4 transportation projects. Some of the projects we're celebrating today are new bike lanes in the Central Business District, the painting of an island in the middle of the road yellow so people can see it, and some new trash cans in the Sweet Auburn corridor. This is the direct result of citizens participating in this program. This is the first time we've done participatory budgeting in Atlanta, and it puts the power directly in people's hands on how tax dollars are spent, and we're just thrilled with the response and the success of the program so far.
This is our annual Eco Depot. We do this once a year out here at Charm. We used to do it at Turner Field, and we did it one year, the very first year we did it at the Civic Center. But this is an annual day where you can get rid of those unwanted, but the things that you know your gut says, don't throw this away, but I can't put it in the garbage and I can't put it in the city's recycling blue bin. So this is the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials. So people are out here today, they're bringing their styrofoam, they're bringing their tires. We've got neighborhood tires that are coming, you know, where someone dumped them. We've got tires that are coming. All of your old electronics, just like when you have that old electric toothbrush that died, your old cell phone that died, you know better than to put it in the trash or the recycling. So you bring it out here to Charm. It's in the springtime, which is so proper for spring cleaning, because then you don't throw out that old paint can that's got paint in it. You don't throw out whatever the Raid bottle that you lost the lid to. You can bring them here and we will properly dispose of them. And everybody is showing up. We've got, the outpouring of people coming out to recycle their items properly is just amazing. Look at all these people. I'm so happy.
Chastain Park is the largest park in the city of Atlanta. This is the last piece of the Chastain Park path, and it's taken over 25 years since it began, and we are here at a groundbreaking to celebrate this last piece, getting ready to start. You know, the phrase, it takes a village. Well, it certainly takes a village here. There have been lots and lots of organizations who have helped make this happen. I think there are over 500,000 people and probably about 250,000 dogs that use the path each year. It's an asset that is used by many, many people, from young people walking along to people on bikes to people running and exercising and folks coming after work to enjoy a stroll in the park. And the path has really been a catalyst for revitalizing the park, and so lots of park partners here today with NYO and the horse park and the pool, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate together.
All right, so we will be going over our proposed FY22 budget, and we'll go to the next slide. All right, so we will go over our proposed FY22 budget. Thank you. So this slide represents our budget trends for the last few fiscal years. As you see, the FY22 proposed budget is $38,673,000, and this represents both our general fund allocations as well as some shared IT expenses that are split with some of the budget areas that are aligned, identified at the bottom there. As we move through the presentation, we'll focus primarily on the budget for our general fund allocations because those other items will be covered in the respective presentations. Next slide. So our budget, proposed budget for FY22 will be $30 million, $30,783,000. Our operational areas, as outlined below, are our applications department, our security department, our network and infrastructure, which is inclusive of our server team, and then our end user support. This team supports not only the operational and administrative functions, but then also provide standards and strategic support for all of the AIM or IT services across the city. Our metrics that we will be focusing on are our system availability, our customer service, and our resolution or response to any issues that we have. Our proposed headcount allocations will be a little over 145 personnel for any general fund. And then as you can see below, there are some split funded personnel with the respective areas as identified. Next slide. So our FY22 highlights, this is both highlights from our FY21 fiscal year as well, leading into FY22, the things that we've been focused on and we're continuing to do. We will highlight our cloud transformation. This has been a critical area for us this year, especially during the pandemic, as we have begun the transformation of our on-premise data centers that reside at 55 Trinity and 72 Marietta supporting Watershed. Both of those are active projects that are underway right now as we are moving and shifting our on-premise services to private cloud that will remain City of Atlanta cloud data centers, but it is changing the way that we perform our work today. We are also actively looking at the major data center at 180 Peachtree. We will be doing a migration in the next year of some of the critical functions. We'll be looking to transition some of that infrastructure, but also remaining on-prem for some. We've begun the evaluations for aviation, and we've done a lot of strategic work around our cloud transformation for 311 to support their new support model. Public safety continues to be a support area for AIM, a focus area. We are working very closely with both the police department and fire as they have transformational projects underway, as well as supporting the jail systems video needs as we move forward. We are actively in the implementation of our CAD system. We went live a couple of weeks ago, continuing to support that to make sure it's stable. We've been supporting the use of Force dashboard. We're having active DIC assessment that's underway that will continue into the next fiscal year, as well as our camera strategy. And this strategy is around the maintenance of our existing camera infrastructure, as well as ensuring that the upgrade that is underway will support our future-proof needs. So we want to scale it such that it can support the growth of the camera infrastructure for the city. We began our application and rationalization project a couple of years ago, and we're full force in that. We went live with a new customer service management solution for 311, as well as AIM will continue to optimize our implementation of this platform where we support all of the support calls for the city. We will be looking to implement our asset management module this year, as well as continuing to support our business continuity, where we are aligning all of the modules and systems that support the critical functions for the city. We'll have a mapping that will help us be more responsive, as well as workforce management. So there is a huge effort that we are beginning where we're looking at our map flow expansion within the city. We do have several instances of it today. We are working with the vendor to look at how we optimize what we have in the city today, as well as moving additional departments that would like to participate in that implementation. We are looking at that as well. As well, I wanted to highlight that we are also supporting the recent go live of our new permitting system, and there are other departments that are looking to transform their current permitting processes. So we will continue to work to stabilize what we have today that just recently went live, and to support the Office of Revenue as we move forward. Another focus area for AIM in the upcoming year will be staff upskilling. The projects and the transformation that has gone on in the last 18 months have introduced a lot of new technologies for the city. So we want to make sure that we are preparing our staff to be able to continue to support that. We feel like having a focus on training this next year will help us improve the productivity with our staff, as well as engagement. We'll leverage the new technology across the city. We're also changing how we work because we've really had to adopt and adjust quite a bit in terms of supporting the way we do remotely, and we will continue in a hybrid model as we move forward. We want to help our employees grow and master their current roles, as well as looking for areas that we can cross-train and cross-support, not only within general funds, but also provide backup support for other dedicated staff that may be in other agencies. And then finally, we'd like to just make sure that we increase that collaboration. We found that when we work as silos, it's a lot harder and it puts a lot of strain on our staff. But where we've had some very massive projects that we've had to deal with under this pandemic, we've kind of pulled together as a team and worked as a collective unit, and we've seen that we can just get a lot more done that way. So we'll continue in that. Next slide. As we've implemented new systems for the city, and we continue to do so, the importance of data is rearing its head. And so one of the things that, I'm on the next slide as well, one of the things that we have focused on is ensuring that we have a data governance and data visualization effort underway. We have begun to pull together all of the experts across the city, because a lot of these experts don't sit in AIM per se, but they are in support functions for other departments, but they have a lot of rich data that we're working to come together as a collective team to support ensuring we have good data. We can visualize that data, making sure that it's solving problems for the city. So predictive analytics is going to be a huge shift for the city of Atlanta, and we're making sure that the programs and the processes that we're putting in place as we move forward will continue to support that. Next slide. So this slide actually speaks to some of the metrics that we've had for this year. And I really want to highlight the fact that this past year we've had almost 50,000 tickets, support tickets that we've really been able to support. And that is from June and up until this time period. We've resolved 90% of those tickets, and I'm very proud of the team for the work and efforts that they have. As well as the critical systems, we've had a 99% uptime of those critical systems that are 24/7, as well as the systems that are kind of just supporting the daily usage. So the team has really focused on ensuring that we provide consistent, reliable, and scalable, secure systems for the city of Atlanta. Next slide. This slide breaks down the $30 million that I spoke about. We do our two largest areas would be our personnel and employee benefits, as well as purchase and contract-based services. And the purchase and contracted services are for solutions that support the city, across the city. We have a small area of tool sets that support our security and things that are used specifically for AIM, but the majority of our purchase and contracted services are to provide services and support for our city agencies. Next slide. So the basic plan of operations for next year, we've had a reduction in our personnel of roughly $268,000, but we did have an increase in our contract and purchase services. So that'll help offset some of that, and also is where we've been able to find some efficiencies within the department. All of our critical positions will be presented at the DRB board that's in place. We did hold as much of our vacancies as we could to allow to support the budget shortfall this year. So we are standing in line to try to get those posted as soon as possible so that we can continue to support our reopening efforts. As I mentioned before, our focus is going to be on restructuring how we work. The work of our individuals are changing. The time that we support is changing, and so our staff is adjusting. Overtime is not anticipated for AIM, but we do have a few individuals on our team that were receiving hazard pay. In terms of our contracts and agreements, again, we did have an increase of roughly $2 million for FY22. And I've highlighted a few of our key contracts. These are some of our larger purchases. Again, Microsoft being our core system for our email and collaboration teams, calls and so forth. SecureWorks is the contract that we have that supports our security. They are a wraparound service for the city of Atlanta, and they provide 24/7 monitoring and response for any incidents that may happen with the city. ServiceNow is an expansion for us this year. We were already using this product internally for AIM, but it has now been expanded to support 311 and some of the other agencies that are doing customer relationship management. AT&T continues to provide our fiber and voice and data. Motorola, while Motorola is not an AIM specific contract, it is one of our larger contracts that we support on behalf of APD and Fire. And then finally, Palo Alto, because that's also part of our security framework, is just one of our larger contracts. So I did want to highlight where a lot of that cost is for AIM. And then finally, our supply and other costs are related to spare computers, peripherals, being able to support onboarding or expansions across the city. So we do keep spares of computer equipment as well as network equipment, so that while we do have support agreements in place, we found that we just can't wait sometimes for a response time from one of our vendors. So we do have a hot swap process that's in place right now, and we want to continue to fund that. And so that's the end of my scripted presentation, and I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. That was very comprehensive. Holly, anybody have questions for CIO Hayes? Questions about AIM? All right, I am not I am not hearing from anyone, which means you gave a really, really thorough presentation. So thank you for your time today. For my colleagues that weren't able to be with us live, they do have the materials and they can follow up with you offline if they have questions about it. But thank you to you and your department for all that you do. Everything seems to be running smoothly, and we do appreciate that. We're gonna take a break now. It is 12:19, and we will be back at 1 o'clock for our final briefing of the day with Invest Atlanta. So thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Thank you. Good afternoon.